Hey everyone, I am Jill and welcome back to Whispering Willow Farm. I am in my high tunnel today and I'm about to do a pretty tedious but necessary task, and that is thinning out all of my root crops that I have sown, which behind me is carrots and radish. And this is something I actually do get asked often, and that is, how do you have success with carrots? We grow so many carrots, so many radish and beets because we cold store them for months at a time, and then we pull from them either for fresh eating, and we ferment a lot of them. So today I'm going to share with you all of my tips and tricks of the trade in hopes that you guys will have great success this year sowing root crops as well. I will start out by saying variety matters. I'm actually going to take my camera off the tripod and show you guys, because we grow a lot of hybrid varieties here, and that is because they are bred for performance, right? They're bred to be disease resistant, high performing, they can withstand a lot of the elements. And so while there is something so admiring about the heirloom, and we will always grow those on our farm, that is not what our main priority is. So although we do grow heirlooms on our farm for flavor and culinary purposes, a lot of what we are growing to store, and especially what we are growing to sell on our farm, is going to be a hybrid, because it is going to perform better, because that is literally what it was bred to do. And so I'm going to go through and show you guys just the germination alone. Now I'm growing some heirloom carrots for a restaurant that we're providing for. However, the yield's not going to be as much. The germination is going to be a little bit spottier, and it's just not going to yield the same results as a hybrid. So I want to share with you guys some of my favorite carrot varieties. If you are, just now getting to where you're ordering your seeds and you're going to be sowing out your carrots, these are some of my favorites. So we have a Napoli variety. These are some of the ones we harvested last year. They are very uniform, big carrots, and they've kind of been a tried and true for us on our farm. Another one is Bolero, which is also an orange variety, pretty uniform. And if you are wanting some of those colors, some of those, beautiful pops of colors that you get from an heirloom, there is a hybrid variety called a rainbow, which is a mix of orange, yellows, whites, and reds. And it's also done really well for us here on the farm. Now, if you're wanting something for culinary purposes, last year I grew a variety called Viper, and they were these really long. You harvest them when they're slender, and we just roasted them whole. I don't recommend this for a storage carrot, but if you're wanting to ferment or just use it for a culinary purpose, this was really fun. So we grew it in the fall. I cooked a ton of these for the holidays. I just roasted them with like honey glaze, and they were really nice. So again, it's going to be dependent on what you are growing your carrots for, is really going to determine some of the varieties that you choose. But the links for all the ones that I have recommended today, I will leave in the description. So as you guys can see here, I have heavily seeded these carrots, and what that means is, you can see here, there's a whole bunch of carrots sprouting. So I'm going to explain to you how I do this and why I do this. But these are all my hybrid varieties. So you can see we've got some really good germination taking place. There's a lot of green happening. And then down here we have some of our heirloom varieties sown the exact same way. But you guys can see here we already have not as dense carrots, and the germination's a little off. And that's just pretty standard. That's just some of the differences when it comes to growing an heirloom versus growing a hybrid. There are lots of pros and cons to growing both, but that is something to keep in mind. If you are only wanting to grow heirloom carrots, you want to extra, densely plant them, because you might not get as many germinate and sprout. All right, so I'm not coming at anybody. Everyone has their own tips and tricks on how to see things, and everyone's gonna find, different success based off of where you live and kind of those tried and true tips for you guys. So I want you to know at the start of this, if you have listened to another gardener or maybe another YouTuber about a way to sow carrots, and you think that's gonna work better for you, do it. I'm not knocking on any of those. However, for us, we're all about efficiency. So I've really got to hone in these systems. And if I was to come out here, I know one thing that a lot of people say is you put like a wooden board down, or even burlap potato sacks, and then you take them off. That's an extra step that I don't really have time to do, and we've planted almost 5,000 carrots on our farm. So the thought of covering all of those up with 2x4s or burlap sacks isn't gonna work for me. And if you're in the same boat, this is gonna work just as well. So I recommend, to have beautiful, abundant carrots, you need to heavy seed. Now, I know that the back of that seed packet's gonna tell you your spacing, and it's going to tell you that you're going to plant a couple, every half inch apart, an inch apart, whatever. I'm going to recommend that in this case, you don't really listen to the back of that seed packet. It is a guideline, right? And it's for someone who maybe is new and they have no general idea. But when it comes to certain things, and I also do this with my radish, I find it better to heavy seed, densely plant, and then go back in and thin later, which I'm about to show you what that means. Now, you might be asking, well, why would I densely plant when I have to go back in and it's adding another step? That is true, but what happens if you only plant that one seed according to your seed packet spacing, and then you have to come back in and re-sow, and then you're going to have, carrots that are germinating and producing at different times. So for us, we want to sow all of our root crops at once. We want to harvest them all, wash them and store them, and just be able to pull from them. So there's a few different reasons why it would be beneficial to just heavy seed and go back in and thin out versus having to go back through and, spot fill and then hope that germinates as well. And so what you're going to do is figure out your spacing. We've got our drip tape, and so we have actually planted on either side of our drip tape. That way it's just easy for planting. So you guys can see here, we have our drip. We've got carrots sown on either side. This is just going to be, a preference thing. Figure out how many you can get in there and what's going to be the easiest on you for watering and maintenance in the long run. All right, you want to make sure that you have amended your bed properly. Carrots, because they are a root vegetable, they're going to grow down instead of up. Granted, they will put on their tops, but it's a bit different in that regard. And so you want to make sure that you've got loose soil. That way it can penetrate through and actually grow a healthy carrot. So if you notice that you have real, clumpy clay-like soil, maybe take a broad fork in, which is what we do. We broad fork our beds, we amend it, then we will broad fork in those amendments. And so what I do is once I figured out my spacing, I'm going to go in with my hand. You can use a hori-hori, whatever you have, and you're going to create this little trench. All right, so create your trench. This doesn't have to be super deep, just a visible line. That way you can go back through and know where to seed. And you're going to pour your carrots in your hand. You guys can see here, I am pretty densely planting these. Cover it back up lightly. There you go. All right, so that's pretty simple. This next step, you guys, this is what is going to either make or break your carrot year. And I can say this confidently because I have been growing carrots for years and years, and I have literally yielded hundreds of pounds of carrots. We only grow root crops twice a year, and we have enough to last us all year long because we grow that many. So densely planting, in my opinion, that is the way to go. But here's the next step. You guys see we have drip irrigation laid, and we have it to where it's watering all of our stuff twice a day. But the key for successful carrots is to make sure that you overhead irrigate until it has germinated. And so what I did is I allowed my drip to stay on that automated twice a day, schedule, but I still came in with a water hose and I overhead irrigated until I saw successful germination. Just now, you guys saw what my carrots looked like. Am I starting to back off and just let them be watered by the drip? And I talked to a lot of people, and the key there is just not watering enough. And so I was watering about twice a day, morning and evening. And you just want to make sure that it's saturated to where your seed is germinating, but also that increases that germination. And so if you want to have successful carrots, I really do believe that just making sure you water into germination is kind of that one crucial point in being super successful. Then when that has happened, I'm going to move on to the second step, which is thinning out your carrots, which, like I mentioned, is an additional step, but it's pretty easy to do. You can save the tops and eat them as microgreens. For us, we typically just feed them to our animals, but you can keep these. Don't think you have to waste them. But when thinning out your carrots, there are a few things to know as well, because you do not want to disturb any of the existing plants that you're wanting to stay and continue to grow into carrots. So I'll show you how I do it. It's pretty simple. So one of the most common questions are, one, my carrots didn't germinate, they didn't sprout, what am I doing wrong? And then two is, I have these really, really tiny carrots. What am I doing wrong? What happens when you have really, really tiny, puny carrots, that's because carrots were seeded too close together. And so what happens is these carrots right here are really, really close. If I were to leave all 3 of these carrots, none of them are gonna size up appropriately, because the truth is my carrot should be about the size of all 3 of these combined. And so what I do is I'll go in, you can take your fingers and pinch at the baseline. I'm using these pruners I have here. You're just gonna go in and cut at the base, and I'm gonna go ahead and cut another one because I want these to be pretty good sized carrots. And so now I am left with this one singular carrot plant. All right, so we'll do it over here as well. You will just cut at the baseline, remove the plant, and so now that will be a pretty decent sized carrot. And then this one needs to go. So we'll remove that one. So now each of these will size up into decent carrots versus these small tiny carrots because they were just overcrowded. Not only are they going to be, you know, competing for the same nutrients, they're just not going to be able to develop a good enough root system to provide a nice strong large carrot. So another thing you guys noticed, I mentioned you need to either use pruners, scissors, or your finger, and you need to pinch at the baseline, not yank and pull up. And so if you are, you know, ripping up one of those seedlings, more than likely it is going to disturb the root system of the little seedling that you want to stay, and that is going to prevent it from establishing roots. It might even kill your seedling. So it is important to make sure that when you're going through thinning, whether you're thinning carrots, whether you're thinning beets or radish, you want to make sure that you just cut it off at the soil surface and you're not pulling or yanking. Because this is a taproot vegetable, you really need to make sure you're not disturbing or messing with the roots of them. All right, you guys, those are all of my tips for growing beautiful, abundant carrots. I promise if you just implement these few things, you will not regret it. There are a few things we do right on our farm, and the root vegetables we have definitely kind of gotten down to a science. So I hope that you will try some of these. An overview, just to remember, is densely plant them, make sure you water until they germinate, and go back in and thin them out. And I hope that it proves to be really fruitful for you guys. But thank you for hanging out with me. I'll talk to you soon.